Welcome everyone, I'm back for the third time to talk to you about a couple Twilight Zone episodes. This time we have Episode 4, the 16mm Shrine, and Episode 5, Walking Distance. And, like last time, we have sort of a unifying theme in these episodes. The last two episodes were about fateful meetings with personified supernatural forces, and these two episodes are about nostalgia and letting go of the past. Let's start right off with Episode 4, the 16mm Shrine. I'll have to admit up front that this isn't one of my best loved episodes, but it is noteworthy for some reasons, one of which is that it's the first episode to star a female lead. The star in this situation is Ida Lupino, who would go on to direct an episode of The Twilight Zone in the 5th season. She plays Barbara Dean Trenton, an actress who had a brief stint of popularity some 20 plus years ago, but has since spent quite a bit of time out of the limelight. She now spends most of her time holed up in her mansion, endlessly re-watching her old films, but she dreams of one day making a triumphant return to the big screen, and has some friends in the business who might even like to help. Now, you might be thinking, Truth, that sounds exactly like the plot of Sunset Boulevard. Well, a director she had worked with in the past is willing to offer her a role, and maybe this will help her get out of her depressive state. But she is mortified when she hears the sentence, "You play a mother," as she believes she should still be the glamorous heartthrob leading lady. It pretty immediately escalates into an argument, and she refuses to participate in the film. Admittedly, I do think this would too often be the case with leading actresses, and it still persists to some extent today, where their career's life cycle will go from you play the main character's love interest, to you play the main character's mother, to you play a witch. I think nowadays women generally get to enjoy a better variety of roles, but it's definitely an area where some older stories were more limited. Barbara wants to get all her old friends together and have a party to cheer her up after this outrageous encounter, but her friend Danny has to give her the reality check that all of her old friends are now dead, or retired, or moved away, or otherwise out of the LA life. So she's receding even deeper into her shell, but one of her old movie star friends does stop by to see her when he just happens to be in town for the day. And unfortunately, this is another cruel reality check where the handsome movie star that she knew back in the day is now just an ordinary middle-aged businessman. She seems almost resentful at him that he actually dared to age during all these past decades. Shortly after this, her servant, maid, attendant comes into her screening room and is horrified by what she sees. And when I first saw this episode, I thought, oh god, she hanged herself. But no. After all, this is the same show which one episode ago had two men shoot each other with a completely bloodless result. And it wouldn't really be a Twilight Zone episode without some supernatural element. No, instead, what she and Danny see up on the screen is present-day Barbara, and she's hosting a party in her house, just like she had been wishing to do. After that, she's gone without a trace, having literally disappeared into the films that she was so obsessed with. I think it's easy to dismiss this episode as a Sunset Boulevard knockoff, but that doesn't mean it's without its merits. And even so, it came out at a time when people couldn't just watch Sunset Boulevard whenever they wanted. It would be some time before it had a wide home media release. One thing I really liked was the look of the screening room. The light from the projector shining through the spinning film reels makes for a surprisingly ominous atmosphere, and the single chair sitting next to the projector immediately tells you the story that Miss Trenton is the only person watching any movies in this room. Her spiral into depression is well executed, and it even makes you feel sympathetic for her, even if she's obviously grown bitter in a lot of ways over the years. But the ending to me is a mixed bag. A lot of Twilight Zone episodes have a kind of moral lesson that the main character has to learn, and then become better off for doing so, or worse off for failing to do so, but that isn't really the case with this episode. Like I said, it seemed at first like it was going to be a tragedy and go in a direction that was too dark for TV. But instead, with the main character being literally absorbed into the film at the end, it's not really a tragic ending or a happy ending. I guess a statement you could construe from this is that if you become too obsessed with something, it'll consume you. But in this situation, the character got exactly what she wanted by being consumed by her obsession. Her unreasonable wishes were satisfied in the end, and she never had to suffer for her bitterness or unwillingness to compromise. I would say it kind of makes you think, but... Now, the next episode deals with a similar theme, but by contrast, it's one of my absolute favorite episodes. It's called Walking Distance. It's one of the first episodes I ever saw on TV, and a big reason that I wanted to keep watching the series. Our main character in this one is Martin Sloane, a 30s-year-old businessman from New York who one day got fed up with the life and just got in his car and started driving to clear his head. He stopped at this gas station in the middle of nowhere and saw a sign for his old hometown, fittingly named Homewood. It's only about 1.5 miles down the road. He reasons that's walking distance, and goes for a walk down memory lane while his car is being worked on. We come to our second soda shop scene in the series so far, and Martin sits down for an ice cream, which he is shocked to find out only costs a dime. He remarks how the shop is exactly the way he remembers it. He even remembers Old Man Wilson, who would always be sleeping in the chair in the back room all those years ago before he died. But when Martin leaves, there's a brief scene where we discover Old Man Wilson is still alive, and he's there in that back room. How can this be? Martin continues on his walk, and he soon encounters an Oscar-winning director playing marbles in the street. Well, a future Oscar-winning director. It's none other than Ron Howard, here meeting him on his journey.
They used to play marbles. We gave them special names. The steel kind, the big ball bearings we got out of streetcars, we called those steelies. The clear kind that you could see through, we called those clearies.
And the blue ones, we called those blueies. And the brown ones, we called those brownies. And the pink ones, we called those pinkies. We weren't very creative children, I suppose. As you might already be aware, Martin has literally walked into his own past, and he soon even sees his 11-year-old self in the park. He immediately approaches his past self, something which time travelers nowadays have all kinds of rules to prevent, and so naturally his past self goes running. He tries to approach his parents next, but basically ends up raving at them like a madman and doesn't get anywhere. I think it's a nice touch how they only talk to him through the screen door. I think it kind of shows how his past is always in sight, but never quite reachable. He wanders around town some more until night falls, and again he finds himself outside his parents' house. He tries to, again, convince them that he is their son and that they should look at his ID and all these other things, but again he just comes off mad, and so his mom slaps him in the face. Then he runs off back to the park, trying to find his past self again. He finds himself on the merry-go-round. Do you like that? He finds himself. And he tries to chase after himself, but his child self falls off of the merry-go-round and somehow gets his leg crushed underneath it. Martin from the future also collapses in pain and the whole ride shuts down. This is another scene that I love. The whole park goes dark except for this one spotlight on Martin, and everybody just silently files away from him, leaving him alone. It's simultaneously somber and eerie. He laments that he just wanted to tell his past self to be grateful for summers like this, not to take any moment for granted, and that these are some of the fondest memories of his life. But now he's gone and destroyed his own past. His father shows up to return his wallet to him and says that he looked through it and looked at his ID, and his story seems to check out. He has a very level-headed approach to this apparent time travel. Then he gives Martin a sort of fatherly lecture, even though the two of them must be close to the same age around this point. I really love the whole dialogue between the two of them here. It does a good job of communicating all of this episode's themes, but it's also written in a way that's inspirational and thought-provoking.
Maybe when you go back, Martin, you'll find that there are merry-go-rounds and band concerts where you are. Maybe you haven't been looking in the right place. You've been looking behind you, Martin. Try looking ahead.
As Martin leaves the town, he stops at the soda shop again, but this time everything has changed. Now the place is full of teens, listening to jukebox music, and reading paperback books. It's disgusting. And those 10-cent sodas that came with 3 scoops of ice cream, well, now they cost 35 cents. Why even bother, huh? He gets back to his car after all this, and I kind of have to wonder, where did he stay overnight all this time? Or was it maybe some situation where no time at all had passed from the gas station worker's perspective? Personally, I'd be pretty concerned if somebody stopped in for some gas and an oil change, and then they just disappeared for 24 hours after walking a mile and a half down the road. But the big reveal after Martin returns from his journey is that he walks with a limp now, and it's because of a childhood injury he had when he fell off a merry-go-round. I really love this episode, and I think it's very thematically rich. Like the previous episode, it kind of tells you that it's dangerous to dwell too much on your own past, but I think it does it in a more complex way. That dwelling on the past actually causes Martin permanent injury, but at the same time, it's not entirely a tragedy. His father encourages him that there are joys in life at every age, and you just need to know where to look for them. Martin goes through a tough lesson, but not really a downfall. It's an ending that you can face with some optimism, but also, at the same time, with a grim sense of reality. And I think it's that thematic balance and the complex messages that make it one of the best episodes out there. I used to think of myself as a really nostalgic person, and I think that's why this episode resonated with me so much when I first saw it. But I think that not everybody has that kind of experience. I recall specifically somebody I was really close with in the past. It was someone who actually convinced me to buy this shirt and said it looked really good on me. Anyway, the two of us were lying on the couch one morning looking for something to watch on Netflix, and we passed by the Twilight Zone, and we're like, oh yeah, well, we both expressed sort of a fondness for this show. This was one of the episodes we watched, and, well, she only thought it was okay. I know for a fact that this was someone who was not really nostalgic for childhood and doesn't like to sit back and remember the good old days like I did. And I've always theorized that that was the reason she didn't love the episode like I did. But for most people, I can't recommend this episode enough. Even though I just told you everything that happens in it, I highly recommend that you watch it, just because the presentation and execution of everything make for a fantastic 30 minutes of television. I was actually surprised when I really got into the show that this one was made so early in the series, because it plays like something very refined, like the team had been making episodes like this for years beforehand. Well, the rankings for tonight's episodes should come as no surprise to anybody who just sat through this video. Currently, the 16mm Shrine ranks at number 5 on my list of favorite episodes so far, and Walking Distance ranks as number 1, my absolute favorite episode out of the 5 episodes so far in the series. And I wouldn't be surprised if it stays up there for quite a long time. Maybe even for this entire review series, I guess we'll see. The next episodes coming up are called Escape Clause and The Lonely, and they're 2 episodes that I have strong feelings about, so I'm glad that I get to talk about them so soon. In some good personal news, the sponsorships for this video series have tripled since I first started out. I must give my heartfelt thanks to all of these fine people, and if you would like to join their ranks, you can financially support this video series and others on Patreon. And I thank you all for watching. Lost my marbles. probably turn the light on.